Hello class, here is the tutorial for the research evaluation assignment. Um, this week you're going to find a study on the university library that will help you answer these set of questions right here. Now, I'm going to go over a couple parts here. One, I'm going to talk about what type of articles to find. Two, I'm going to show you on the McKay library kind of how to use it, what I'm looking for, which by now, being a 350 level class, students should already know, but I'm going to do a little refresher just in case, so there's no miscommunication. And I'm going to show you an example of what a completed assignment looks like, so you're understanding of the nature of this assignment as a whole. Okay. First off, you're going to find here experimental studies. Okay. Um, just make sure before I go any further that the disclaimer is the tutorial doesn't replace the reading of the directions too. So make sure you're reading these directions because I may not go over all of it word for word, but just the main parts. Okay, so back to the tutorial. Experimental studies. Okay, that's where there's a independent and dependent variable. So if you pull up a research article that doesn't have it, but you like to study, don't use it. You need to find one that's experimental. So it's got to have an independent and a dependent variable. That means, like we've said in past weeks, the independent variable is the manipulating variable that's thrown into the study to see if there's a reaction, and the dependent variable is the reaction. So the participants were maybe cured by headaches or it caused them to act out or to think a certain way. It manipulated an action. Okay, so no correlation studies. So if you have a correlation study, it could be a very major point deduction. Okay, at that point, because you need to use experimental. Peer-reviewed research article means that the study was pretty much stamped with approval by a peer reviewer. I've seen them work. They meticulously go through each nook and cranny of the article. When you look at a research article and you see a citation in there, that peer reviewer actually goes to that article, reads it to make sure the true essence of that citation in that research article is legit. So they've combed through the whole entire article. So peer reviewed means it was stamped of approval with an expert in that field that the article and the study is legit. All right. So make sure you do that. Now, you do want to use a Word document. So you'll copy and paste these sets of questions on a Word document. And I'll show you the example in a second. There should be absolutely zero quoting. Sometimes students overquote, so they get a zero. Sometimes students quote in certain areas. If it's overquoting in like a question, the question is given a zero, no credit for it. So make sure you are not quoting at all. Write the whole summary in your own words. Okay. So let me show you the library real quick here. So this should look familiar for many, and you basically want to make sure that you're clicking peer-reviewed articles. So let's say I want to do a study on um, narcissism. And it might have me log in, it might not. I may already be logged in, but it could actually make me, but it didn't. So I want to make sure, and let me pause this for a second and zoom it out there. So if your screen's uh, switched a little bit, it's because I want to show you this left-hand side. So all these articles come up, and one rule of thumb is obviously you want to make sure that the scholarly peer-reviewed journals is checked, but you also want to make sure you're finding articles within the last 5 years. Okay, I usually say 5 to 10 years. So if it's really way back, like past 10 years, it's going to be a deduction. If it's like in the 90s or 2000s, please don't use it. Okay, don't use anything but within the last 5 years, because a lot has changed, even with these concepts like narcissism, because there's so much that has developed, like technology, like Facebook, where levels of narcissism has risen. So if you choose any of the whatever topics you choose from, you're going to actually, from the book, from chapters 1 to 3, you're going to choose something from the last 5 years. So these will be from the last 5 years. So you'll just comb through the articles and make sure that you are finding an article that's an experimental study and peer reviewed, okay, within the last 5 years. And going back to the directions, make sure, like I said, you should be reading the directions, that you're choosing a topic from the first 3 chapters that we've done in this class so far. All right, let me go ahead and pull up the example assignment. So here's the example. Notice how here's the questions right here. They're bolded. This is perfectly done. It's summarized. It's not like there's a word count, but it's summarized thoroughly, and there's no quoting. So, like for instance, it says describe and evaluate the purpose and hypothesis. So you're going to see the words describe, describe, identify, and describe. All these say describe. There's no way to answer each question unless you are writing more than a few sentences. So if you there's no way to answer a question just 1 or 2 sentences. Okay, especially when it says describe. All right. So notice how this student right here has the hypothesis on top of what the description is for the purpose. They go over research participants and setting. They identify the independent and dependent variable. They don't list it. They actually describe it in sentences. What they use for the design. So you're going to have to read the article, parts of it, or all of it, and you're going to have to summarize it. Okay? You're probably going to have to read all of it. Results, strengths and limitations. So you have to make sure, like when you get to this point right here, also, you're going to relate what you found as a study to something from the textbook. Well, obviously, you have to use chapters 1 through 3 to choose a topic from. So go back to that book and describe what we learned about the topic. So this student used hindsight bias on this research evaluation assignment, and they went thoroughly describing what was learned and how it was applied and concepts and examples. How does it fit in your own life? Make sure you're thorough. Don't just explain, give an example. Be thorough. Okay. Then notice here how this is actually the APA style reference. Okay. It shouldn't be a website listed because you're not using websites. It needs to be the APA. Sometimes students will find an article on a website instead of using the library. It's not right. You have to use the library for this purpose. Okay, and I'll show you where to get this in a second if you don't know. But this is the contents. It usually has the last name, middle, the first initial, year, name of the article, name of the journal article, the number. Usually has a volume and number, but this just has a number, page number, and you can put the DOI if you want. You don't have to. I left that in there in the example to show that you can do that. Okay, so this is a perfectly good example of what it should look like in length and everything. So hopefully that example helps out. Finally, I'm going to show you, so to get that APA information, the best way to do it is when you get to this point of the article that you choose, there's a site right here where you can click. Okay, and it's going to bring up all these different references. Harvard, Chicago, MLA. You find APA 7th edition, and this is it right here. Okay, so notice how it has the last names, and it has the initials, it has the name of the article, it has the publication it's in, it has the number and volume, okay, and it shows the page numbers. So this is APA. This is where you'd get it. All right, so just remember to follow the directions. All right, very, very clear. I gave you an example of what it looks like to complete the assignment. Do it on a Word document. Do not submit PDF files or anything like that. Has to be in Word. If it's submitted any other way, I will reject it and require a resubmission with a late point deduction. So make sure it's on Word. Make sure you're following directions. Keep it very simple and ask questions. Okay, thanks.